of 1.4 complex numbers. Still working with those imaginaries. Last time we simplified, added, and subtracted. Now we're going to multiply and divide. So if we have a situation where we have a number on the outside, we're going to distribute. 5 times 6 is 30, and then 5 times 3i, or negative 3i, is negative 15i. If the number on the outside has an I with it, nothing changes. We're still going to just distribute. 5i times 6 is 30i, and 5i times 3i would be 15i squared. Now this is the first time that we have encountered the I squared. I squared equals negative 1. So instead of 15 times I squared, this is really 15 times negative 1. And anytime you see an I squared, you always want to change it to negative 1. So that leaves us with 30i minus 15. So 15 times negative 1 is negative 15. But this is not written in the correct form. When we're dealing with imaginary numbers, we always want them in what we call A plus BI form. So the real number first and then the imaginary number second. So we need to switch these around. Negative 15 needs to go first, and the positive 30i needs to go second. So a lot on that one, making sure that we change I squared to negative 1, and making sure that we always write it in A plus BI form. Number 9, we're going to be foiling. Works the same with imaginaries as it does regularly. So we'll take 5 times 6 to get 30, 5 times 2i to get 10i, negative 3i times 6 to get negative 18i, and negative 3i times 2i to get negative 6i squared. Then we want to simplify, combine our like terms here in the middle. So our 10i minus 18i is negative 8i. And then we have this I squared again. We want to change the I squared to negative 1. So negative 6 times negative 1 is a positive 6. That will then have us combine more like terms. 30 and 6 need to be added together. So we have 36 minus 8i. Notice still that the real number is first and the imaginary number is second. Okay. Again, we're going to have another situation where we need to FOIL. These are special because they are called conjugates, which means that they have the opposite I value, but the same real number value. Notice that the 6 on both is positive, but the I values are the opposite, negative 2i and positive 2i. When that happens, you'll see we're going to do this foiling. We get 36 plus 12i minus 12i minus 4i squared. The middle two terms will be opposites of each other, and therefore will no longer be there once we combine our like terms. So we have 36 minus 4i squared, but I squared is negative 1, so negative 1 times 4 times a negative 4 is a positive 4. So that actually ends up being 36 plus 4, which is 40. So you'll see that when we multiply these conjugates together, we end up with just a real number answer and no imaginaries at all. So our final answer doesn't have any i's in it. Let's switch to division now. When we are dividing, this is very similar to what we did with radicals back in chapter R. We have to multiply top and bottom by the conjugate. So we are going to multiply times 3 plus 2i on top and bottom. And when we do that, we need to consider it a binomial, because we're going to be foiling and distributing, so we put all of those in parentheses. Notice that we don't change the sign of the 3, we only change the sign of the imaginary. All right, so if we distribute the top, we get 18 plus 12i, and foiling on the bottom, 9 minus 6i plus 6i minus 4i squared. Okay, then we want to do some simplifying. Down here in our denominator, the 6i's equals 0, and here I squared is -1, so it makes this a positive 4. So our denominator is now going to be 13, and our numerator can't simplify. Now, we want everything in that a plus bi form, like we talked about earlier, so that means we need to separate these out. We can't leave it like this. So we need to write this as 18 over 13, that's our a value or real number value, and then 12 over 13i. So this is our a plus bi form. So if in Schoology it asks you for the value of a, you would say 18/13. If it asks you for the value of b, 12/13. 12/13 is b. Don't put I in there. I is not included in b. B is just the 12/13. All right, last one, another division. So again, we're going to multiply top and bottom by the conjugate. So go ahead, hit pause, try it yourself, and then come back and check to see if you got it right. So you should be multiplying by 6 minus I, numerator and denominator. Make sure those are all in parentheses. We're going to FOIL in our numerator and denominator. And then do some simplifying after we get everything multiplied out. So in our numerator, we can combine the -5i and the 24i. So we'd have 30 plus 19i, the -4i, remember I squared is -1, so times -4 would be a positive 4. And then the 6 i's in the denominator divide out. So we end up with 36 plus, this is I squared, which is just an imaginary 1 right there. So a -1 times -1 is going to be a positive 1. So we end up with, in our numerator, 34 plus 19i, and our denominator is 37. But that is not written in a plus bi form. So we have to separate it. 34 over 37 plus 19 over 37i. And again, if you're asked what the a value is, you would say 34 over 37. If you ask what the b value is, 19 over 37. And you would not include the I with the B if it asked you just for B.